Besides that, we got some Dragonflight news that we could discuss. We got a Bellular video here on the lore, the story of the Dragonflight, and everything we know, which is nice. Heal through that 229 already on normal after the nerf. Andy should be easy as crap. Yeah. Well, he didn't really get nerfed too much in normal. I think these are the only two nerfs from normal. It's mostly Heroic and Mythic that got nerfed. Definitely more Mythic than Heroic, but Heroic got some good nerfs as well. I haven't done them on LFR actually, so I don't know how that is, but everyone says that's already a good one. But here, let's pull up this Bellular video, and we'll check it out. See some more Dragonflight news here while we wait for group to fill.
It's time to talk about the story and this setting of Dragonflight. You're going to learn a lot today, especially if you don't really know how we got here. And there's something that I noticed immediately. The
LFR Anduin has
look
hilariously
like
easiest
old
way.
Watchers. The Titan architecture doesn't look like the modern techie stuff of BFA and on.
Oh, okay, you're saying Heroic should be more like normal. Yep.
More like
that sounds
Ulduman,
about right.
More like Ulduar.
Nagak, you in here?
A bit more classic.
Greatness, I know you are. Well played, sir.
So this expansion is going to be taking us back to lore that is rooted in the 2000s. And I'm actually really, really keen for that. So today, you're going to learn just about everything, and I'm going to kick it off with how the Dragon Isles actually fit into the timeline and the canon of World of Warcraft.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I love me some
these
lore.
islands, where'd they come from? What's going on? There's a lot of unanswered questions, but here's the TLDR, okay? A long time ago, the Titan Watcher tier noticed that Galakrond, one of the drakes, grew to an enormous size, feasting on the other drakes.
Yeah, cannibalizing.
5 other drakes, then, who would eventually become the original dragon aspects, they banded together, and with Tyr, they ended up defeating Galakrond. Shortly enough later, the Titans uplifted.
He said with Tyr. Tyr, I learned, is the Titan who gave the aspects their powers. So Tyr saw this. He granted these aspects their special powers, and they were able to fight and kill Galakrond,
charging them with protecting the world. Now, this
and then
is
they
all
became the
covered
Watchers of the
in
World.
The book Dawn of the Aspects from, seriously, like ages ago. I mean, Alex Straza is mentioned in the manual of Warcraft 2. But that dragon novel doesn't mention the Dragon Isles,
well,
does
of course,
it?
Spag.
How did this happen?
No problem.
Well, I think the dragons very much could have been uplifted and given their charge on the Isles. It would make sense, given the Isles' Titan tech, and, I mean, it's clearly set up to be the seat of draconic power. At the very least, after the uplifting happens, the dragons then relocate to the Isle as their base. And from this point, many thousands of years likely pass.
Such a cool cinematic.
Then we get to the War of the Ancients. When the cinematic says 10,000 years ago, that's the time of the War of the Ancients.
Ah, the War of the Ancients.
All of that stuff with Sargeras was going on around the same time.
Oh, now it makes sense. So that's why there's like a green cloud over there. All the stuff with Sargeras and the legions going on. You know, I didn't realize that until now. That's why they had to leave the Dragon Isle? It was because the War of the Ancients was going on. That's why there's a green glow on the horizon.
Neltharion, Deathwing, was being twisted by old god whispers. So he finishes this project to build the Dragon Soul, and he betrays the rest of the dragons. But using the Dragon Soul damages his body so much that he's forced to retreat. Very shortly after those events, it all goes down at the Well of Eternity, and the Sundering happens. That's basically when the Well of Eternity does a big explosion, and Kalimdor
breaks apart the continents. Yep.
Now, that very much seems to be when the cinematic starts. So as that happens, the Dragon Isles empty. The Watchers are powered down. They go dormant. If I were to speculate here, I would say that at this stage in time, Deathwing had just wreaked havoc on the other Dragonflights. So they'd already taken a large hit. They've now seen the world really does need to be protected. But they also know that Deathwing is super powerful, and he is at large. Perhaps you could say that the risk of helping the world is that they would be spread too thin, and that perhaps that would leave their new home, the Dragon Isles, well, vulnerable. And given what's probably on the Dragon Isles, Deathwing getting control would almost certainly be a terrible thing. So that's likely why they decided to go out and help the world, but also to make their isle basically be completely hidden away, such that they...
So there was the War of the Ancients that pulled them away, and then the rising threat of Deathwing that basically kept them away. And so that's why they left. That's why the island was shut down. That's why Mr. Stoneboy over here was left to stand watch and rest until they came back.
They could not even get to it. 10,000 years later, Deathwing, of course, has been defeated. The old gods have been defeated.
Right.
Azeroth is awakening. Koronos responds to this by lighting the beacon, as Alexstrasza had told
Koronos.
the other watchers
We learned
to
that
do.
it was his name after the cinematic.
So now, with the way to their home open, these dragons realize that once more, it's time to take up their charge. Now, the big question here is what actually causes Azeroth to awaken? That's a good question.
Alexstrasza. Man, that's such a nice model. When I saw this in the cinematic, I was like, oh, and the roar that she gives off right here.
I think
Chills.
she's slowly been waking up, given all the crazy events that have happened to her. So we could say that this next stage in her waking up is either a direct result of Zoval's tomfoolery, or it's maybe a downstream effect of what we're going to see in the pre-patch, or perhaps in patch 9.2.5. Thinking about recent lore then, between the Doomsayers...
Side note, I think 9.2.5 is going to be a really good patch. Like, it might be like kind of, we're not getting a raid, all that stuff. We are going to get some old raid content refreshed, which is going to be exciting. Cross-faction raiding and cross-faction play is going to be one of the biggest changes the game has ever seen. Don't underrate that in your guys' minds. And I think it's going to be a nice refresh, and hopefully it stays fresh enough until we get Dragonflight, because they haven't even announced a release date for this yet, which means it is going to be quite a while. We're not getting this until 2023. I would almost guarantee that. So, we got time. So, hopefully 9.2.5 is as good as I think it's going to be, but I do think it's going to be nice. It's going to be a nice refresh here and keep us a little bit busy, at least until that happens.
The Zareth Mortis oracles and the various old
Mal.
god whispers, the awakening of Azeroth has been a long time coming. It's been obvious it's going to start to happen. Indeed, the awakening of Azeroth is really what the Titans always wanted to happen eventually. The whole point was to make Azeroth, nurture the planet, keep it safe so that eventually Azeroth can, grow up and become a big Titan with the rest of them. Of course, that all reinforces the meaning of Alexstrasza's line, "You will feel our coming in the waking of the land." So, quite a few things are waking up.
That blue glow in the ocean right there, I was wondering if that meant something. Some people were saying maybe it does. I thought it did.
In the waters.
Oh, I preemptively talked about it before he did.
Watchers and the Jarden, or these elemental
Come,
giant
servant.
dragon killers.
We have a
Between
realm
them-
to destroy.
It's Kai
Primal
Spanish.
Incarnates. This
Thank you.
expansion
I know
is going
Spanish.
to be
Thank you for the
reaching
follow and
very
welcome to our
far back
Scourge.
To the core
What's
of
up?
Azeroth. And that even extends to
Welcome.
the races. As an example, we're going to see primordial trolls. Now, if you think about the canonical descriptions of the Well of Eternity, and then you look at the water that's brimming up in the shores of the Dragon Isles, well, that water is a bit Well of Eternity-like, and we're going to be getting some primordial trolls, and we know Night Elf lore will be involved. Perhaps we're even going to find out how the Night Elves came into being. Indeed, Eyes of the Earth Mother says that Elune and Azeroth are mother and daughter. Tyrande is featuring.
Oh,
in
yeah,
this
I forgot about
expansion.
that.
The Green Flight are featuring as well. They're going to have a similar story given Tyrande's recent history. So I think we can bet that the Dragon Isles is going to bring all of that lore together. So what will precede the cinematic that we all watched a few days ago is the pre-patch. In that pre-patch, Alexstrasza is going to send us to Uldaman. And between that and what we've seen thus far, I think it's very clear that the Titan story is going to be expanded.
The Titans.
One of the things I liked the most initially was Koronos, the Titan Watcher, just looks so authentically Titanic.
He does.
He looked like the earliest
Greek
constructs
goddess.
we saw in Uldaman
Esque.
all those years
Yeah, not
ago,
is.
like straight out of vanilla. I think it's very telling that Dragonflight begins with the first Titan dungeon that World of Warcraft ever had. And the story of Uldaman pretty much goes down like this. So we've got Locan, the mad Titan Keeper from the Halls of Lightning, who was, old god corrupted, all that stuff from World War. He usurped Tyr's position as the head keeper. Locan then tried to kill all of the uncorrupted keepers with Yogg-Saron's minions. Then Arcadeus, he escaped with the Disc of Norgannon, which basically is just a Titan databank. He fled to Uldaman, which basically was just...
Uldaman's such a great raid.
It's a stasis
Ulduar,
chamber for failed Titan experiments. Many thousands of years later, the dwarves would discover Uldaman, and they'd really go in there to try to work out what was going on, because they were trying to basically work out their own origins. And what's intriguing is that the pre-patch Uldaman is going to have some previously undiscovered chambers. So who are we going to find? Who are we going to fight? Big questions, and I imagine we're going to learn more about Tyr, because, well, Tyr's cool. He's just a character I think that's always came off quite well. And for all of this to happen with the Discs...
Yeah, Tyr's the one who gave the aspects their powers. I'd like to learn more about him.
We must remember, is the instigator of the dragon lore, because it was him who basically banded together with the dragon aspects when they were still basically kind of like proto-Drake looking dudes.
Right.
And he really created the dragon lore. And he ended up sacrificing himself to defeat Yogg-Saron's servants, of course dying in a place known as Tirisfal. Yeah, that's what that is named after.
What? What? Tirisfal is named that because that's where Tyr died? That's where he fell? Why did I not know this? I had no idea. What do we need? Just probably one more healer and more DPS. Yeah. Wow. I had no idea that's why Tirisfal was called Tirisfal. What the hell? Welcome, by the way.
So
it's Spanish. Thank you for
this is all
the follow.
Extremely classic Warcraft, and this kind of ties back. This expansion's lore ties back.
That's mind blowing.
Some of
I
the
didn't even know that.
stuff in Warcraft. As I said, Alex Straza was even in the Warcraft 2 manual, and when we look at this, it's like Uldaman. WoW's first Titan dungeon. To me, that sets, I think, a pretty good.
Uldaman, great dungeon.
But okay, enough of this.
Ulduar, great raid.
We've got some more modern events to talk about.
The hunt for the
Dragon
Isles.
Isles have always been in the background of the game. It's something that we players have speculated on for a long time. We've seen the very early concept art of the Dragon Isles from vanilla.
Vanilla WoW
the
concept
old
art.
Development drawings of where it could be on the map. Though where part of our story today starts is actually 12 years ago in the Badlands, where the red dragon, Rhea, was experimenting on some black dragon eggs. She was able to cleanse one of these eggs of void corruption. That egg hatched into Rathian. Rhea, of course, died protecting that egg. And after a rather disastrous attempt to ready Azeroth...
Man, I didn't know. What the hell? Rathian lore has been there since 10 years ago? Wow.
For the incoming Burning Legion
This shit always blows my mind.
But funny enough, in a way, where Rathian's actions actually directly led to the Legion invasion happening because he kicked off the whole time travel plan. Whoops. He then turned his attention to locating the Dragon Isles, using his network of agents, and then, in BFA, us, to chase down some leads. And it turns out, the dragons weren't just being secretive. They literally did not know the way home. And that tells us
that's in the cinematic.
I mean, Titan magic is wild. It can shape worlds. So perhaps the Isles reappeared in a different place. I mean, you'd imagine a dragon would be able to remember the way home. So whatever way this was sealed...
Right, but in the cinematic, they said, like, even they were meant to forget where the Isles were until the time was right. And that's why Rathian, with all of his attempts, has been unable to find them. They've been just sealed away, locked away.
Away from them was extremely hardcore. So that's how Rathian comes into this story, and some of the modern attempts to locate these Isles. So let's talk a bit about what could be going on.
We have a realm to destroy.
Okay, so dragons have got
Machiavellic.
a really deep history. And
GG,
we're
thank you for the follow and welcome to our Scourge.
Most modern version of all that we know in the next few months on this channel. But for now, the two most important aspects to think about are the Cataclysm and the dragon's connection to Azeroth. So, Notharian, aka Deathwing, caused the Cataclysm, and that was all in N'Zoth's name. Of course, we defeated him, and the dragons then decided that they had fulfilled their purpose, and they ended their charge. which
Right.
honestly was a strange move at the time, because apparently their purpose was to stop one of their own after he got corrupted by old gods, but that only could have happened
Yeah.
if they were
That the ending to Cataclysm always felt janky and like a weird. Like, why? That's it? That's the dragon aspects? That's the end of them?
uplifted in the first place. So, yeah, the end of Cataclysm's lore was considered to be weird at the time, and it still is kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
I'm glad they're stepping it back and bringing the dragons back. Now, with that, their connection to Azeroth is going to be so much more important. At the end of Cataclysm, we had no idea that Azeroth had a world soul. We thought it was just an important planet that the Titans had been to. It's crazy how much things have changed since Cataclysm.
Right.
And that means we're going to learn a hell of a lot about the dragons. Per Chronicle, the dragons are actually descended from elementals. Now, elementals come from the world itself, and the world certainly seems to power the Isles. Steve even tells us that the dragons hope elemental power will return one day. And that's kind of interesting, since primal elemental dragons who follow Galakrond are our very first antagonists.
I wonder if have we gotten any news on what these are? These renderings are really cool. I mean, obviously, I think they each fit with a different, dragon aspect flight, but these are nice.
I mean, as an example of just one thing, the reason why the elements were so crazy and out of balance in Azeroth is because Azeroth absorbed
Yeah, Mag, you're right. I'm going to try to get two
the
priests.
element of spirit, part of her being a world soul and all of that. So that even makes you think about what this relationship between all of these different dragons are. I mean, we know that there are dragons who basically don't want to follow the Titans. Could they have a more complex view of Azeroth, given how she absorbed the element of spirit and that threw all the other elements into chaos? I don't know. Point is, we're going to learn a hell of a lot because our understanding of Azeroth has developed so much since
Those drawings
the
do
last
look
time
cool.
we had super major dragon lore.
I agree, Machiavelli.
And really, today's video has been a crash course in the most important lore for you to know as we have this new expansion announcement. But we do have some more immediate questions. So, Rathian, right? He wants to reestablish his flight. He wants to, well, probably take up his father's role as Aspect, but, do things right and not go crazy.
Right.
But Steve actually questions that in an interview, suggesting another may be more worthy. Who? I mean, Ebonhorn, I couldn't see him challenging Rathian. Will he maybe
Ebonhorn's the
find a
only...
group of
Do we know any other Black Dragonflight other than Ebonhorn and Rathian? I don't think so. And obviously, Rathian's got the looks. I mean, come on, that man's handsome.
uncorrupted black dragons on the Isles?
I wonder who would
is
challenge
this
him.
challenger going to be? Certainly something is going to go down there. Another thing in patch 9.2.5, and I'm super excited about this actually, we're getting some Blood Elf quests with Salandria, who you probably don't know,
Nice.
but back during Orphans Week, which I think came in the Burning Crusade, or at least it was the TBC iteration of that, Bronze Dragons attack, because we quest with Salandria as a child. Bronze Dragons actually kind of try to attack her if she's brought to the Caverns of Time, but they're stopped by Zalur who basically says, things she might or might fail to do in the future, we can't attack her for that. So,
Wow.
with Salandria being brought back into the story in patch 9.2.5, this could very much be whatever villain she either becomes or fails to stop. An interesting connection from the Burning Crusade to the
Damn.
Dragon Isles. Then
There's no way they laid that thread knowing this would happen.
This expansion. I mean, that Salandria thing is happening with time dragons. And that makes us think of a certain other group of time dragons.
Like, I get they laid the thread there because they planned on using her, but there's no way they knew there'd be this expansion this late in the game. And they'd be using her now. But hey, it worked out.
I mean, to me, it's refreshing not knowing the big villain. It's just a big old adventure.
Yeah,
But
we talked
they
about
told
that
us we'll
yesterday, who the
discover,
next
I
villain
mean,
is going to be. There are potentials. A lot of these dragons end up getting corrupted, so we'll see.
Through this expansion. Now, what we know is we're starting with the Primal Incarnates. These are basically these proto-Drake leaders who followed Galakrond.
Oh, that's who these
maybe
are.
Literally, or maybe after his death. And maybe you could say that these are like,
Primal
or
Incarnates.
elemental drakes in certain parts of the Titan cosmology chart. Maybe Galakrond was like the one of them for like death and decay. Who knows? But maybe Galakrond could end up being the big leader. I mean, attempts to resurrect
I-
Galakrond have happened. The Lich
I
King
feel like
tried-
we're either going to get a quest line or some time-walking dungeon or something that has to do with us seeing the Galakron fight or being part of it. Now, Galakron size-wise is insane. Deathwing Deathwing landed on Stormwind and his 2 feet were there at the entrance, like crushing it. He was massive, right, compared to the city. Deathwing is like the size of Galakron's foot. So how they would bring him into game, I have no idea. Maybe they'd downsize him, but we'll see. But I do feel like we're going to see a live Galakron. Not like our timeline live, but potentially some time walking stuff where we see him live, or time reversal stuff. Did they hire someone like Annie Rice or King or Rowling to do a little bit of writing for them? A lot of thought in the new stuff. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I like where this new lore is going, and it all seems to connect pretty well.
tried it.
I don't know who they got to do
we
it.
do have Morzond, who is the time-twisted version of Nozdormu, who, of course, founded the infinite Dragonflight. So he was actually the end boss of the End Time Dungeon.
Remember this fight where he reverses time? This was a great fight where you could like reuse your cooldowns and everything, and everyone would get healed up.
But that
This
was
is underrated
his future
fight.
self. In our timeline, Morzond is yet to exist. He's an invader from the future.
Yes,
So-
Galakron was the dragon who got massive by eating other dragons. And then the dragon aspects killed him with the help of, what's that Titan's name? Well, I just talked about him. Starts with a Y. Anyways, he gave them their powers, their dragon aspect powers, and that's how they defeated Galakron.
So the story always has been that Void Whispers caused Nozdormu to go a bit mad, kind of promising a way to subvert his own demise. Well, he's not lost his marbles yet, has he? And the old gods are dead. I mean, ish, for now. So how's that going to make sense? It's interesting. Legacy, I suppose, is just a massive part of this expansion. But for the big bad and what we're going to be doing, I think it's going to be a bit different. Steve Denuser told us in a recent interview with Warcraft Radio that we are going to discover our greatest adversary through learning about the history of the Dragonflights. And that means there's a lot to find out about them. And what I hope I've been able to do in this video is explain how the Dragonflights fit in and perhaps spark some of your imagination as to the big questions. I mean, if Morzond is powerful enough to change the timeline, could you not say that could actually make him one of the most dangerous villains in Warcraft? Who knows? But I think there's a lot of interesting things to answer. Now, I'd be remiss to say or to leave out that after Shadowlands, I'm a little bit rattled with the lore.
Yeah.
Now,
We all
the
are.
amount of times developers have used the word grounded, that they've talked about returning to a core Azeroth story,
Finally.
going back to high fantasy and kind of a bit away from the tone and direction that they'd maybe been to in Shadowlands. Even that
Right.
Chromie time is being extended to level 60, such that Shadowlands isn't actually even part of the new player questing experience.
Just write it off.
I have
Shadowlands
duality.
written off.
I have, a few wolves fighting inside me. One of the wolves is pissed after Shadowlands and what I feel was a mistreatment of the canon.
Yeah,
The
no
others
doubt.
are kind of saying, well,
This is
hey,
sad.
they're making all these good noises.
This is sad. The little wisp that became Arthas. This is Arthas Menethil. Welcome to a world where one of the greatest villains ever created, and probably one of the most iconic characters in all of World of Warcraft, becomes a little wisp. So wrong. So wrong to see what they did with him. What a mistreatment of such a great lore character. This could have been such a great moment where he talks to everybody. You get some closure maybe. You see him talking with his long-lost lover. You see him talking with Uther, his best friend. And trainer. There could have been so much done with this moment, and instead it was just shat away.
Shadowlands and what I feel was a mistreatment of the canon. The others are kind of saying, well, hey, they're making all these good noises.
Him and Jaina were in love, right? And then we get a Sylvanas monologue instead of her talking. Somebody else should have been talking during that cinematic at least.
So
Whatever.
The best I can say is
It is what it is, I
we'll
guess.
have to see how it goes. Hey, if we all have a fun time teeing them up for a big hit, discussing all this fun lore and all the fun possibilities, then, well, you know, we can end up being disappointed, or it could actually end up being great lore, a return to form.
Yes.
I really do hope
That's
it is
what I'm hoping.
because so much of this expansion does seem to be trying to be a return to form. I mean, borrowed power's gone forever, it seems.
Yay.
That obviously means they know things went wrong.
Yep.
Perhaps that'll happen in the lore. Perhaps that's why they're being so keen to tell us this is a... It's weird to say a grounded high fantasy story, but in the context of Warcraft, I think we know what that means. Let me know what you think then, and what your theories are for who the big bad could be. With that, I'll see you next time.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Yeah, the lore seems so much better. You know, the connection to our world, connection to old stuff in the game. The lore just seems to be heading in the right direction. And so does the expansion as a whole. I really hope this... I have high hopes for Dragonflight, I do. And it seems like it's going to be great.